Hi, Bob. How are you?
Good, Jim. How are you this afternoon?
Well, great. And I get to learn about polished concrete repair considerations. Thanks for
Yeah,
dialing us in.
no problem. How many days do you have?
I got all the time you need.
Yeah, Jim. So I've been polishing from back in 1998, I believe, is our first polished concrete project, which shows our age. And it's always been the Achilles heel in the polishing industry is making a good structural, solid, good-looking repair. So us people that have been polishing for quite some time, we're always on this quest to try to make our repairs look and blend homogeneously with the concrete. And one way that I like to start off with is this color matching software or app, I should say. It's called ColorSnap. And oftentimes, polished contractors, they'll look at the slab and think that they're going to start with grays, when in this case, you can clearly see that it's got a lot of warm tones, a lot of browns. So you got to take that into consideration. You've got to, do a good color match on the matrix of your repair.
Well, I can see that app being useful in a lot of circumstances.
Oh yeah, I use it on a routine basis. All right, so you have to take the type of repair that you're making. In this case, the aggregate that was used is a broadcast glass aggregate. This was a footprint, and so we chipped out the footprint. Got maybe 3/8 of an inch to a half inch in depth. That's another thing. If you're broadcasting glass aggregate, you've got to have enough depth that you've chipped down the imperfection so you can completely encapsulate the glass. So we want to use the same exact glass that was originally used on this polished concrete glass aggregate project. Now, if it's just a traditional ready mixed concrete slab that you're polishing and you want to make repairs, the best way is to get their ready mixed sand and the ready mixed cement so you can start off with the same ingredients that were used in the slab. And I realize oftentimes, you're into it a year or two later, and that's not an option. So then that's when you're going to use resinous materials mixed with sands and different cements. You can buy masonry sand from your big box store. Traditionally, big box stores try to source their sands locally so they don't have to truck them across the United States. And there's a good chance just using the masonry sand will match your concrete repair patches pretty good. Keep in mind, the sands have to be dry. So all ingredients that you're mixing into your repair material, assuming you're using a 2-component resin, it has to be dry. So oftentimes we'll dry the sand out.
Boy, another good reason on working with a ready mix company on having good relations there, huh? They don't allow
Yeah,
anybody to just show up and get material.
you're exactly right. So, for example, oftentimes we'll have a class here in Temple, Georgia, and I want to teach the students how to make good quality repairs. And because I have this allegiance with my ready mix producer, he'll allow me, or he'll even send out, a 5-gallon bucket of sand, one little bag of pigment, assuming that's integral color, and a little cup of the cements. So that's very important.
I think tipping a few beers back probably helped that relationship, huh, Bob?
Not too many, but maybe occasionally. Okay, so this is an unfortunate scenario in which it was a high-end project that was specified broadcast glass aggregate, and unfortunately, the concrete finishers stepped on top of the glass with walk-behind troweling machines, as opposed to using a ride-on panning machine and or waiting later to start the finishing process. And this is the unfortunate circumstance. Now, at this case, you got to make the decision that if there's literally hundreds of boot marks like this, it doesn't make sense to go in and try to spot repair each one. And this may require getting in and scarifying and or shaving down a whole big area and then coming up with the repair material. But you got to really be careful. Remember, in a past episode, Jim, we talked about the importance of evaluating your slab. The polishers need to take a good look at the slab to make sure that there's no unfortunate circumstances like this. And sometimes you don't know until you start grinding.
Oh boy, that looks like an expensive repair.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can see in the arrows there, those are all footprints where the glass has become depressed. Now, I take it sometimes to the extreme. If I have time, slow days, weekends for the contractors, rainy days, I would recommend that you come up with your own set of formulas with different pigment loads and different mixtures This happens to be a product that's called SRG, which stands for Surface Refinement Grout. And we have a client that had kind of tan and buff floors. And so take advantage of in your downtime, making up samples that you can then carry to the job site, put them on the actual floor and say, hey, we're using, sample 1A, and you already have the formulations. Because it does take some time to color match. You're not going to typically hit a color match in the first go. So if you've already done the homework beforehand, and even variations of gray, just go ahead and make maybe 5 or 6 samples with gray samples and grind and hone and polish it, carry it to the job site. You already have your formulations done.
And those could be used on any projects that had a similar color, right? You would keep
That's
those.
exactly right. Correct. So this was an interesting one. This was an exterior pedestrian bridge in which they got unfortunate cracking, and the client was not happy and asked if we could do some things to try to reduce the visual appearance of the crack while making a structural repair. Now, the only other consideration is the products here have to be what's called aliphatic. Some of the other products are what's referred to as aromatic, and that's the chemistry side of the products. And the reason for aliphatic, it has to have UV stability. Some of the other ones might amber over time, where this type of product that you see here is 100% UV stable. So you can see the matrix, the slab that the person is standing on, it has a very light appearance. So in this case, we used, I literally went to big box store to the tile department, and I bought 3 boxes of sanded tile grout, like you would grout a tiled floor in the interior of your home. And we mixed, we did several formulations using this resinous material, part A, part B. And as you'll see, we got really close to it, and it was a very good color match. So you can see we're using a blue stripping pad on the left-hand side of the screen. That's the repair that has not been ground. And you can see right in the middle between my thumb and the grinder where it has been ground. That is a very, very close repair. I was very, very happy with how this came out. Okay. And look at like from where the grinder is to the bottom of the screen. That's a very good repair. And in essence, you made that crack disappear. So keep in mind, you only try to router the crack out if you have to, meaning the sands are coarse or something like that. Because if you're using, a coarse sand and you don't router it out, there will not be enough width for the sand and the mixed sand in, to get into the crack. I try not to router it out if I don't have to. And sometimes I'll even use a non-sanded tile grout mixed with the resinous material, and that'll get right down into those cracks as well.
That is just an incredible repair right there, Bob.
Yeah, very happy with it, Jim.
You don't do this without having done your testing ahead of time on color matching, huh?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the nice thing is too, it's good to go back and troubleshoot these projects. So I happened to go back because I was in the area 2 years later, and it still looked like you see right there. So this is an interesting photograph. So these are 3 different repairs. So on the top, you have a gray repair. That's just an opaque repair. On the middle portion of this, you have where they use the sands and the ready mix aggregate. And then on the bottom, it's just an opaque brown. So it's pretty obvious which of the 3 looks the best. And you can see that virtually made the patch disappear by using the ready mix sands and cements mixed into the 2-component resin. Dramatic difference. Yeah, big difference. So oftentimes I'll see polish contractors make a repair like this, and they'll just say, hey, let's just fill it up with joint filler, like a semi-rigid short hardness of 80 or 90 joint filler. But the problem is, as the concrete expands and contracts, if the width exceeds the tensile strength of that material, it'll pull out. So most manufacturers will recommend making a structural repair first, which is what you see here. So it's a rigid epoxy type material that's filling in the little chipped edges, and then you grind that flush. It sets very rapidly. You're probably grinding on it in as little as 30 to 45 minutes. And then we'll go to the next slide. And then you can see the material's ground flush. Now you revalidate the saw cut with a saw blade that matches the width of the saw. joint. And then once you've cut all of the joint or the repair material out of the joint, all right, let's go to the next. And you can see on the top right and the bottom right, now they revalidated the joints and the repair is intact. And then we'll come back and we'll fill it with the semi-rigid polyurea joint filler. That's the proper way to make a repair like that right there. Okay. So now when patching with, this is back to a glass aggregate job. Oftentimes people will ask, what's the best way to, grind prep the area in preparation for a repair. In this case, it could be as simple as using a chipping hammer. They do have some milling machines, depending on the size of the repair. They have a small milling machine that stacks like maybe 6 or 8 blades. That's very effective for small repairs, and I found one that's 110 volt. Some of the bigger pieces of equipment requires 3-phase power, which can be troublesome. So you have to just get creative on chipping the material down, and then pay close attention to the depth that you're going down to. Remember, if you're using ready-mix aggregate, if the ready-mix aggregate is 1/2 inch to say 5/8 or 3/4 inch rock, you would have to go down at least that deep so that aggregate bottoms out on the bottom of the patch. But more importantly, the matrix completely encapsulates that aggregate. Okay.
It doesn't look like it would accept even 2 aggregates wide, right?
Right there. No, right there. Yeah. So that's just, you'll see in the next couple pictures exactly. That would be one right there where you couldn't get any aggregate in there. So another question I have is, a lot of people will ask, is it better to saw cut a clean, crisp edge, or is it better to leave the edge fractured? Hypothetically, let's just take the 2 lines in the middle, and let's say that at the top of it, we made a perpendicular cut, and on the bottom, so in other words, we were trying to cut out a rectangle. Does it look better to have a raveled edge like that, or does it look better to have a saw cut edge? In my opinion, depending on the aggregate, I like to ravel up the edge like that, because it tends to draw your eye, away from a dead straight line. So it's just things like that to take into account. And matter of fact, go to the next picture, please. So this is where you would have a saw cut edge. Okay. So that's the difference. So you would either, just make a nice clean saw cut, or you could have just fractured, left the left, the right, the top and the bottom. You could have just left that fractured as opposed to making a saw cut. But this is a good example, is where you've got to take into account that largest aggregate that you're putting into the mixture, because that patch needs to go down at least that deep to the largest aggregate size. So here's a great example. These are 5 different repairs, and all the repairs are structurally sound, right? But this is where you're doing your color sampling. So this is just my opinion, but on repair number 1, you can see that's close to being acceptable in my opinion. Generally, if you stand 5 to 10 feet back and you cannot see the repair, that's usually visually an acceptable repair. But you go to repair number 2, once again, structurally sound, the aggregate looks good, but way too much gray. Repair number 3 is a home run. That basically disappears. So that's a good example of a color match. And then repair number 4 would probably be close to being acceptable, in my opinion. Again, I don't know that I would even see that from 5 to 10 feet away. If I was to get up over the top of it, that's one thing. And then repair number 5, it looks like a spaghetti string. That's nothing more than just filling it with straight opaque resin, meaning there's no sand or no aggregate in it. So you can see the dramatic differences between them.
Bob, with the polishing contractors, is what percentage wise, what percent are prepared to make a patch like this or a repair?
Good question, and it's unfortunate. I think to answer your question, it's a small percent. However, it is getting better. We work with some national accounts, and the polishers on those national accounts, I start to see them over and over on these different projects. And so now the guys that we work with, they're making repairs like this, because I always tell them, look, keep it on the truck so you have it ready to go. And so I'm seeing more and more people. And there are people in the industry also that have dedicated their lives to repairing polished concrete. Dave Moore is a friend of mine, for example. He's got a system that works quite nicely, and so he's out educating polished contractors as well on the proper protocol for these repairs.
Now, does he offer a service that he'll repair it for them, or is it all consulting?
Both, yeah. So the answer is both. So we wanted to just run through, considerations for the repair with the time frame that we have. Now, certainly there's other things to consider, like once you've made the repair, you've chipped it down, you want to use what's called a Nylox wheel, which is a nylon wheel on a drill motor, and you want to completely clean the bottom of that repair out and then vacuum it. Don't use a wire brush to prep the area, because a wire brush will transfer the carbon and leave a residual film that could be a bond breaker. And so, just first and foremost, you've got to do your due diligence with regard to the structural components of it, but then take the time and make that repair look good, because it makes the difference on a quality polish job, like you see here. Some of these 3 pictures had some repairs in it, and with a nice shine on it and proper repair techniques, it'll make a big difference on a polish job.
Thanks so much for that. And until next time.
Appreciate it, Jim. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.